Today I am going to show you an extension built with PixieBrix that will enable you to send information from your browser to Automation Anywhere. Specifically, this use case is the creation of tickets from Jira inside Automation Anywhere. And I will show you how you can integrate Automation Anywhere with PixieBrix. So here's how it works. First of all, I have a ticket that I created here in the Jira website. It's a setup Automation Anywhere account for 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏@pixiebrix.com. Anybody could have written this ticket. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Quickbar on the PixieBrix side. I do that by hitting Command K on my keyboard. As you can see, the Quickbar shows up and I have multiple choices. Here, I want to provision an IT account as the option. So I click that, and because I had highlighted the user email, which in this scenario it's mine, 𝗤𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 the email address field. It also pre-populated the ticket ID field here by looking at information on the page. And then here, all I have to do is select whether I want to provision Jira, I want to provision Automation Anywhere, or any other software that I could add to this dropdown. And it's totally customizable. So let's assume I want to provision Jira. So I do that, and then I click Submit Request. And then this goes in the background. You can see some confetti here in the background. This happens. And the next thing I'm going to show you is the request. Today is April 20th. And you can see how the request appears here. So this is using, obviously, the GMT time zone. So now that I have this request appear here, I can pretty much go ahead and pull it up in AARI. So I'm going to click this button, and it's going to open the control room. I'm going to log in. And I can see here that I have all of my requests that I've created. I have the one that I created just a moment ago. This one here, as you can see from the timestamp, 2:14 p.m. There you go. So, and this ones are the previous ones from yesterday that I also opened up. So with this, what I'm basically showing you is that I can pipe information directly from websites like Jira. I can pipe it directly into Automation Anywhere, and I can see the requests, like pulling them back from Automation Anywhere inside the browser on the sidebar, on the PixieBrix sidebar, to be precise. So now you might be wondering, how did you build this and how does it work in behind the scenes? Well, I'm glad you've asked, because what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and create this from scratch. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open PixieBrix. I can hit the right-click, inspect button here, and then I go and load up PixieBrix. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Quickbar. So here we go, create a new Quickbar. I'm going to call this one Provision IT Account, and then action title, I'm going to call it the same, Provision IT Account. Next thing I make sure is that this matches the domain here on the browser, pixiebrix.atlassian.net. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to add a Automation Anywhere icon, so it looks nice. And this is previewing the icon as to how it looks. And this is the first brick that we've added. And now if I save this and I go back to Jira here, I can do the same shortcut, and I can see, there you go, it comes up in the Quickbar. So perfect. Now we're going to add the second block. So before we add the second block, though, we want to open the Automation Anywhere Community Edition. So here I've pre-logged into my my account. Just have to hit the login button, and I can see here I had these from the tutorial I've done. So let's go ahead and create this from scratch. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a form. I'm going to call this Provision IT Account, and I'm going to call it Initial Request. So I'm going to create an edit. Okay, so the form opened up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these the right side field here. I'm going to hit the delete key on my keyboard, delete it, and I'm going to get down here and I'm going to drag the text box directly here. And now I can see that my first text box has an ID of text box 0 and an element label of text box, which is great. But we want to also change the label to be, for example, here, we want to do email. And the reason why we're doing email, it's because that's the first information that we're going to capture. So email, or to be better, more fancy, we'll call this email address. Everything else looks good. I also want to make sure that this field is required. So I hit the make field required button. I then go ahead and add another box. And this one is text box 1 as element ID. And it's important to note this because we're going to use this ID in a moment. The second box, I'm going to call it software-name or software name. It's not going to have a default value. And I'm also going to make this field required. And finally, I'm going to add another third text box, and this one I'm going to call it Jira ticket ID. And I'm noting that it's text box 2 is the element ID for this one. This one does not have to be required, so I'm not gonna do that. So I'm not gonna check this box here. What I'm gonna do, however, is I'm gonna first of all save it, and then I'm gonna preview it. And I can see, okay, there's a form title right there. Cool. Perfect. So now that this form has been saved, I go back to my automation and I want to create a new process rather. I'm going to call this one provision account, IT account process. Create an edit. And you can see this the process tab opened up and this new process has been created. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the little rocket ship icon and I can see that select initial data form and request title are, they don't have anything here. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to click browse. I'm going to go to browse again. I'm going to select this initial request form and I'm going to choose it. And then I'm going to also give it a request title. I'm going to call it provision accounts. And then I can also go down here to data privacy tag. I know it says it's optional, but we want to do something with this. So I'm going to insert a variable. I'm going to go here, select the request. And from this drop down, I'm going to do Jira ticket ID text box 2. I'm going to add it. So that way this is set. Everything looks good. I'm going to run it. Okay. And then I'm going to save it. All right. Everything seems to be working fine. So now that we've created this on Automation Anywhere's Community Cloud, basically what I want to do is go back to Jira and bring back my my PixieBrix page editor. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read a component from this page. And the way I do that is basically I'm going to use something called the jQuery brick. So I click the plus button, I type jQuery Selector Reader, perfect. And here where it says property, I'm going to rename it to issue ID because what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and select from this issue the ID. And to do that, we have this nifty little tool that allows you to basically select on the page, after clicking it, what is that I want to select, right? Like you can basically scrape, so to speak, information on the page. So I'm going to select this. Okay. And automatically PixieBrix finds the best jQuery selector for you that allows you to retrieve that information, which is PixieBrix-149. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit the save button. So I have my two bricks, one after the other one in the extension. And I'm going to go ahead and now add another brick. So the next brick I'm going to add is the model because as we've seen in the demo, I had a modal show up, and through the modal, I could basically select a couple of options. So here, what I'm going to do is show a modal or sidebar form. I press this Add Brick button, and now you can see on the right-hand side of the page editor here that I have what the form looks like now, this modal form. Right now, it's only got an example form, an example field. So let's change it. So the form title, first of all, we're going to call it Provision IT Software. And we're going to have one form, and we're going to add multiple forms in a second. But let's modify the first one. The first one was email, and the label for the email was email address. And basically what this does, as I type here in the page editor, it shows me the preview in real time. So users know exactly what they have to fill once they use this extension, but also it enables us to see what the form would look like as we build it. The field description is the user's email address, just to give some context. And here what we're going to do is we're going to select email. And for default value, we want to take the value that we highlight when we have a ticket. Like in my case, the email value was on the ticket. So if I highlight and launch this extension, I want to capture that automatically. To do that, we use the @input.selection text, spelled like this, variable. And what this does is that it basically goes into the first brick here, the input brick, and it will find the selection text, which if I highlight my email, that's going to be it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to required. So I'm going to enable this. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the submit button text, which we can't see here, but you'll see it in a moment, to submit request. So it's more straightforward. So right now we have one field. Let's go ahead and let's add another field. So the next field we want to add is the software field. So this is going to be basically a drop down of what software someone can select to provision, right? So the software to provision will be explaining what this does. And we can put this actually down here and leave here this one as software. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to select drop down. And now that we have selected this field as drop down, you can see that there are no options. So let's go ahead and add an item. The first item could be Jira. The second item could be automation anywhere. And maybe I want to have a third item, why not? Microsoft Office. You can obviously customize this to be as extensive as you want. I'm going to make this field required. And that's pretty much it. Now that we have these two input fields in the model, I'm going to save this and let's go back and see it. So here's my issue, my ticket. I'm going to highlight my email address. I'm going to do the shortcut on the keyboard, provision IT account, and there it is. It automatically populated my email, and it's got the three options for software: Jira, Automation Anywhere, Microsoft Office. All right. And you can also see that the action button here has been changed to submit request, just like we called it. Okay, I'm not going to submit anything because that wouldn't do anything. So I'm going to cancel this. PixieBrix alerts me that I cancel this action, which is pretty cool. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a new brick. This brick is the brick that allows you to create an AARI request, ARI request. It's called Create ARI Request. I'm going to add it. And as you can see, as I've added it, now it's asking me for inputs, for a service, and for a process ID. So first of all, I'm going to do the inputs. So these inputs, if you remember what I mentioned earlier, if I go back into automation and I go back into form, these inputs are going to be this element IDs here. So text box 0, text box 1, and text box 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back on here. So the first one is going to be name. It's going to be called text box 0. And the string here is going to be @form.email. The reason why it's @form.email, it's because I'm getting the information from the @form and from the variable called email. Then I go ahead, I'm going to do text box 1, and this one is going to be called @form.software, and that's the value that I get from the dropdown, this one here. As you can see, if I click it, it's showing me that the name for this variable is software, as opposed to this one, which was, if I click it, it's email. And then finally, I'm gonna add another one, and this one is gonna be called textbox2, and this is the Jira ticket ID, which we're gonna get from the @data and then issue ID. So all I gotta type is @data.issueID, and that's basically where this is where this brick ends for the configuration of the data that I'm going to send. The next thing I need to do is I need to select a service. So for service, I'm going to use this AA personal private, and I'm going to show you later how I can configure this up. And the last information that I need is the process ID. So the process ID, the way I get it is from going back into Automation Anywhere, and then I go to the under process. When I click run, process ID information is literally here, 982. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to paste this here. So process ID is 982. So again, it's from running the process. You can find it into the URL. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to add another extension. This time I'm going to make a sidebar panel. And in this sidebar panel, we're going to show all of the AARI requests as they come through. So to show that, what I need to do is create, like I said, the sidebar panel. I'm going to call this AARI request. I'm going to call it Jira, actually, AARI request. And the heading is going to be AARI request. And this is it. Then I'm going to go ahead and add a new brick. I'm going to add again the jQuery Selector Reader. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the this issue ID or ticket ID, and I'm going to select it from here just like I did before. So I click the button, then I select that, and then PixieBrix automatically picks the best jQuery selector to get this information. Now I know that if I render this panel, it's going to basically show me the information immediately. So, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead now and add a new brick. So now the brick that I'm going to add is the list AARI requests. So let's go ahead and press the plus button. Now we've added the list AARI request. And now it's going to ask me this additional PII tag to filter by. So because we're basically using the information from this step, it's data.issueID. So I'm going to do @data.issueID. And then from services, I'm going to select again the personal one. That's my connection to the community version of Automation Anywhere. And then next, we're going to start building our sidebar. So let's go ahead and add the render document brick. And this is what it looks like. All right, first of all, I'm going to save this. Okay, now let's preview what the sidebar looks like without any customization. I click the PixieBrix sidebar button, and here I can see that I have my sidebar called AARI request, and then there's the example document and example text element that you get by default right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove this default text. And the way I do that is I basically select this container here. As you can see, it's highlighted in blue all around it. I'm just going to click remove element. So that leaves me with the body. And inside the body, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a header, h1. I select it, and then here I click, and I will basically rename it to AARI requests. I can also give it a CSS class if I wanted to, but so for now, that's okay. So now that I have this AARI request, what I do is I go ahead and I click the three-dot menu and I select a list component. And a list component is basically allows me to navigate an array of results and select the results one by one. So now that I clicked on this one here, on this list component, it's asking me to specify an array. It's asking me to specify an element key and an item type. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select an array, click on it. I'm going to use the information that comes from transformed, which is the output variable for the brick here at transformed. And what I'm going to do is .list. And the reason why I'm doing .list will become obvious in a second. Let me save this first. If I were to like render the panel now, I could see that there's actually a transformed list with 4 items. So again, going back here, and this is why I'm using a transformed list. The element key, I'm just going to call it element, so it's obvious. And then the item type, I'm going to select here as card. And that goes and replaces the default paragraph. So now we have a element card that will like basically be rendered for every item inside the transformed list array. Okay, now that I selected this card, it's asking me, okay, what do you want to call your header? Here, what I'm going to call it is @element.title. And then this one is @element.status. I'm wrapping this into these curly brackets because they're basically variables that are being basically templated together into a string. And what this does, it basically takes from the list here of options, it's going to look for the title and it's going to look for the status, right? So if I go here, list, any of these ones should have a title and a status, which is success and provision accounts. Okay. Very nice. So far, so smoothly. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to add a button inside this sidebar so that I can refresh the sidebar without losing all of my information or having to manually open it, close it otherwise. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add from the 3-dot menu a button. The button is called action. I'm going to change from action, I'm going to just call it refresh. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down here where it says select a brick. And instead of the default one, I'm going to look for reactivate all. So reactivate. There we go. So I'm going to just select that. And what this does, it basically asynchronously reactivates all the information on the sidebar. So with PixieBrix reactivated, now that I have my refresh button, I can save this. I can go and have a look at what it looks like. So let's go back to Jira. I can see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 records. If I click refresh, it's basically reactivating it. It's very fast. You wouldn't see it. To see the refresh, I would have to basically create a new one. So let's go ahead and maybe create a new one just to show you that it's refreshing. So here we go, doing the shortcut on the keyboard. Here's the Quickbar, provision an IT account. I will do Microsoft Office again, submit request, and then it's submitting it to Automation Anywhere. And now if I go and click refresh, now we have 4 items. I should be able to see the 5th one just appeared. As you can see, there it is. But this is kind of confusing because they all have the same name and I cannot really identify all of these requests. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to try to provide some more information to each of these elements here. So the first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to create a button. So I'm going to create a button by clicking inside here, the 3-dot menu button. Here it's called action. Well, the action, we're going to change the label here to open in AARI. And then I'm going to change the variant here. And instead, I'm going to do a select. And then from the drop down, I'm going to do an info. So the color changes. Or I could do light, or I could do dark. But info is the color that I prefer. So now what happens is we basically created a button for each of these requests, right? But this button has no information yet. So if I go ahead and render the panel, you can see in real time that I could open it in AARI, but like, what is it actually going to open? And basically what I need to do is change here from select a brick button, and I'm going to do open a tab in a new tab, open a URL in a new tab. So now I basically have to select what is the URL that I'm going to basically open when I press this button. And the URL for this one is basically the URL that I get is the Community Cloud one. So I'm going to take this one from here. Actually, let me log in, and then AARI, and then all the requests. And I'm gonna have to edit this URL a little bit, but so I have HTTPS community cloud @automationanywhere.digital. Then I'm gonna do AARI. Then I'm gonna basically call this, and I'm definitely cheating by reading from my notes, but the URL that you actually want to open is requests, and then ref, and then we gotta add a variable here. And this variable comes again from the array element.ref. And I'm going to have a trailing backslash here. So now if I render the panel again, I can see that and I'm going to save this just so we're safe. You can see the provision account success. If I press a button, it should open in a new tab and take me to the actual submission. And here we go. And it takes me here. If I do it again, because I had to log in, it's going to take me to this actual request, the one from yesterday. And I assume that if I open the bottom one, it's the last one that I created. And it's the one that, yep, that's the one I created about 3 minutes ago. And it's got my name, Microsoft Office, and the ticket ID. Okay, perfect. So far, so good. All of this seems to work. But we want to make this look a little bit better. So the way we're going to make this look a little bit better is to add some information, perhaps on these, like here. Like maybe we want to do a header, or perhaps we want to do a text rather. And then I'm going to remove the header, sorry. So we only have the paragraph text. I can also move up the paragraph text. And here, the text that I want to use is @element dot, and then, let's see, where was it? Yeah, this is, hold on, I haven't changed that well. And I want to use the created on. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to put it here. And it's called, I'm going to delete this, and it's just @element dot created on. And then I'm going to save it and render. And now you can see that in your sidebar, you have provision accounts, the title, when it was created, and then a button to open it in AARI. So if I go here and, assuming that I am logged in, it's going to open it in a new tab perfectly, just like that. So hopefully this video shows you how you can connect PixieBrix and AARI together. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching. Always a pleasure.